Hey guys, Daggett here with another tutorial. Today I'm going to do a really quick one showing you guys how to draw Japanese cherry blossoms in my style. So once again, there's lots of different styles of drawing. This is just the way that I do them. Okay, so to start off with, we're going to do a little circle. The circle is going to be the base of our flower. So we'll do a little circle like this. I try to keep it pretty loose. You can change the shape of it as you go. And in the center of that circle, you're just going to do another small circle, just like that. And that's going to form the middle portion of our flower. We're going to go ahead and put 5 lines in. Each of these lines will indicate the center of a petal. So I'm going to obviously have 5 petals, and I just try to space them out evenly. So we'll start with one right here. Another one here like this. And just like that. It's going to be the center of your petals, these lines. So starting in between the 2 lines, I'm going to come out like this and just come up and form a very basic petal shape, just like that. And you're going to go around and do that for each of them. Okay, so there's that. Now, usually when I draw cherry blossoms, I like to put a little split in the end of each of the petals. This is something you see in sort of old school cherry blossoms, Japanese style cherry blossoms and that. So just sort of where this line ends, you add a little V shape into the end of the petal. All the petals don't have to have this. Some of the petals I'll leave without, or I'll even put a little bit of a point at the end, just like that. And again, this just adds to that randomness and sort of naturalness of the petal shape. So now it's time to basically decide which petals overlap which other petals. And so, for example, this petal here is overlapping the petal next to it. This petal might overlap the next one as well. The next one might go underneath. And this top petal might actually overlap both of these. And this one doesn't overlap at all. And so that, again, just gives you that random look. They're obviously going to overlap differently depending on how the flower's grown. So that sort of gives you that randomness. Now, starting with this particular, the larger circle, I'm going to go around and draw a whole bunch of smaller circles. These smaller circles will basically make up your stamens of the flower. And you just make a ring of small circles just like that. Now, to link those small circles up with that center circle, I'm just going to do a whole bunch of small lines like this. And again, they don't have to be perfectly spaced, but I just try to get lots of little lines in there that link these small circles up in this ring with that center circle there. And so now you've got a really basic, nice looking cherry blossom shape. I'll show you how you can use this format to make a front-on cherry blossom, but you can use the same structure to make a cherry blossom that's on its side, or with fold-overs in the petals and that sort of thing. So what you'll do is you'll go ahead and draw your circle, the big one, but as opposed to doing it front on like that, you might do it on a little bit of an angle, so it'll be more like an oval shape, like that sort of thing. In terms of the center circle, the smaller circle, you want to do that closer to this edge, because this is the edge that's sort of less visible to the viewer. So we're going to do it a little bit closer to that edge like that. And from there, you do the exact same procedure. You start to draw in your lines for the center of your petals. This particular petal, I usually do a half line because I'd like to fold this one over. That sort of gives it this nice 3D look. And the rest of the petals, you can sort of do the full shape and line. Okay, so once you've done that, you can go ahead and add a fold over to this first petal. So the way we're going to do that is basically we're going to try and illustrate that we're showing the outside of the petal. So you do half the petal like that, and then you come in with the center of the petal like that, and you can add that little V in the middle as well if you'd like to, and that sort of makes it look like the petal's folded in on itself. You can go ahead and do that with the rest of the petals, just sort of putting in the shapes of the petals. I like to add these little foldovers as well. you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and add that little ring of smaller circles just like this. And then go ahead and link them up to the center with those little lines that we were doing before. Okay, and that's sort of how you draw them on more of an angle, more of a side-on view. Well, that's how I do it anyways. And we're going to go ahead and add in some leaves now to these cherry blossoms. Best way to do this, in my opinion, is to draw a line that comes off and sort of make it a little bit irregular. You don't want it to be too shaky and wobbly and not too perfectly straight. So I try and give it a bit of a natural flow to it. Coming off the tip of that, you can cut back and do a few little bumps and try to sort of make this as natural as you can make it look. And starting from the other side, I start a little bit further down because I want to show a little bit less of the back of the leaf there. And so you can go ahead and just add as many or as little leaves as you'd like to your cherry blossoms. Okay, from this point onwards, what we're going to do is just draw in some lines indicating the veins of each of these leaves. And you simply start at the edges and curve them in, sort of with a bit of an S shape to them like that. And you go around and just do that to all of the leaves, meeting up in the center. Okay guys, from here we're already ready to get into the inking process. And so what we're going to be using to outline these is a Copic Multiliner 0.5, which is this one right here. I'm going to use that for the base outline for all of these. For the center, including this ring of small circles, I'll be using a Studio Pigment Liner 0.05. Any lining pen of that size will work. If you don't have a 0.05, you can go ahead and use something like a cool grey in a 0.3 or a 0.05 again. I just want those little circles to be a little bit more solid than with a grey. So like I said, I'm going to go in with a 0.05, which is really, really small. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with that 0.05 and go ahead and do all of the center. And we're basically outlining this the same way that I've done in all my previous tutorials. You're just tracing your lines that you've already put down. So now I'm going to go in with the Copic Multiliner 0.5 in black and just outline everything else, excluding the small lines inside the leaves. I'll be going back in with the 0.05 to do those. Okay, so we're nearly at the end of the inking process. Sometimes what you'll notice is that I'll actually outline those center lines of each petal using the 0.05 in black. You could again do this in grey, or you could even use a color to do this, like a red stripe down the center of each petal can look quite nice. I'm just going to go ahead and do that with this 0.05 black, sorry. Okay, so that's the outline of the cherry blossoms finished. We're going to go ahead and erase all the pencil lines. Okay, so now that all your pencil lines are erased, normally we'd go into line boosting, which I'm going to do a little bit of, but like I said, cherry blossoms are not really multi-layered flowers, so you don't really have to boost everything. So I might just boost some of these lines that go in front of the leaves. This just sort of adds a little bit of depth to the to where the leaves sit and pushes them back just that little bit. In case you haven't seen my other tutorials, Line boosting is just where you thicken up some of the lines to push certain parts of the image forward. Depending on the image, I'll use anything up to a 0.8 size Copic multi-liner, or sometimes I'll just use a 0.5 like in this case and just go right next to the other line. That way it thickens it up a little bit. And so that's all the line boosting we're going to do for this one. So now we're ready to start shading this one. So as with my chrysanthemum tutorial, I don't like to put too much, if any, black shading inside the flower itself because of the bright colors that I want to use in them. So I'll pretty much only be using black shading inside of the leaves. And so we'll be using a Ecoline Brush Pen 700 black for all of our shading in this one. And I'll also be using, as always, my little handy water brush pen, which again is just a little watercolor brush that you can fill with water and take around with you. So we'll be using these two to shade this image. So to shade the leaves, I'm going to go ahead and lay down a little bit of water a little bit off the center of the leaf, and we're going to come in with the black, and going off that center line of the leaf, I'm just going to come down about halfway, just like that. And then using the watercolor brush, I'm just going to fade out that black. Okay, so on the other side of the leaf, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to start from that outer edge and fade our way inwards. So we're going to lay down a little bit of water. Starting from that outer edge. And just work your way inwards, shading inwards, leaving a little bit of light at the end of the leaf there. And so I'm going to go around and do that with all of the leaves, and we'll come back and start coloring things in. Okay, now that we've shaded our leaves, we're going to go ahead and get started with the colouring. So I think I've done leaves with these colours before for you guys, but the colours that I like to use are G99 Olive in the Copic range, and I also like to use with that YG95, which is a pale olive colour. They work really well together. I really like the combination in terms of doing leaves and that sort of thing. In this case, our leaves are quite small, and we've already done a lot of black shading. So I'm going to be leaving out the 99 olive, but generally speaking, I'll use these together. In this case, we'll just be using the YG95 or pale olive color. And we're going to go ahead and just color those leaves. They've already been shaded, so all there is to add color. One thing I forgot to add, which I'll mention here, is that generally speaking, when I color, I'll go from the black shaded area and sort of whip the pen outwards. This sort of leaves a bit of a white border on some things, unless I want them to be really solid. And that little white border sort of just gives you a little bit of a highlight. I like the way it looks, so it's just something that I do. I start from the black and sort of whip the brush outwards like that. Okay, from this stage, all of your leaves are coloured in. We're going to start colouring the flower itself. Okay, so to colour the petals, we're going to start with our 318 brush pen from Ecoline, starting from the centre of each of these centre lines of the petals. What we're going to do actually is we're going to use our brush pen to go ahead and wet that centre line up to about this point here. Now you've got to work pretty quickly with these pens, so we're going to lay the ink down just like that in the center, and you'll see that it runs into your water a little bit. and then you can go ahead and start to sort of blend that out. I find it helps to have a sheet of paper on the side, just a sheet of watercolor paper that I use, one, to test colors, and two, I can use it as a bit of a palette if I don't want my colors to be as intense. And so I'll show you what that looks like. I can sketch out a little bit of color from our Ecoline brush pen, and I can sort of dip into that as I need color and use it as a bit of a palette for as I'm using paints. And this way I can get a little bit of a richer color without actually applying the brush pen directly onto the flower and sort of ruining the whole thing. So we're going to go ahead and go around and do all of the petals just like that. Okay, now in terms of the foldovers on the outside of the petals, I like to keep those a little bit darker than the inside. So we're still going to be using the 318 brush pen from Ecoline. We're just going to go in and color, leaving a little bit of a white gap at the edge as a bit of a highlight. Just like that. And then I like to fade the end of this end of the color off to the edge of the petal. So you can sort of go around and just do the outside of your petals a little bit darker than the inside. So another thing you might like to do is add a slightly darker shade of your color to areas where the petals overlap, such as right here, just to add a bit of a shadow. And so you can go ahead and do that and then just gently blend it out a little bit, and this will sort of give you a little bit of shading, which will give the flower a little bit more shape. Okay, so you've colored all the petals of your flowers. You're now going to go ahead and do the center of each of the flowers. I like to use a 334 Ecoline brush pen Scarlet, which is basically just red, to go ahead and do that very center dot in the middle of the circles. So I will go ahead and just do that. Simple as that. Like I said, I just like to use that as a little bit of a base. And from there, we're just going to use our watercolor brush to fade that red about halfway up into our lines there. From here, we're going to go straight over the top of those lines and straight over the top of that red with our deep yellow, our Ecoline deep yellow. And I usually like to leave those smaller circles white. One thing that you'll notice, sometimes the color will bleed into those circles, especially if you're a little bit messy like I am. So one thing you can do about that is take a gel pen, and you can go ahead and use that. It's a white gel pen. You can go ahead and use that to add white back into those little circles just where you've accidentally gone into them. The other thing that a gel pen like this is really useful for is for doing highlights. And so let's just say I want to add a highlight to the center of some of these petals. I can just go along like this and add a little white highlight to some of the edges of these petals. Now with highlights, I try to keep them pretty broken up and dotted. I don't like to do a solid line. I guess this is a style thing maybe, but I like to sort of just do a little bit of a highlight against some of these lines, and you can do it even in the leaves a little bit, but we'll leave it at that. So that's a tutorial on how to draw cherry blossoms. I hope you enjoyed it. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please, if you did like this tutorial, give us a thumbs up and comment below if you have any ideas for future videos, drawing challenges or tutorials or something like that. You can also catch me over on Facebook at Daggett Designs to keep up to date with all of my current work, keep up to date with my digital portfolio, and just to see what upcoming videos there are. And please hit the subscribe button for more great content. So I'll see you next time. Bye.